Anybody who has told you that seed oils are good for your health are completely and utterly lying. We've been lied to for literally all of our lives that foods like butter that are high in saturated fats are bad for us, correct? You've heard this before. Saturated fat increases cholesterol in the blood, which leads to clogged arteries where you will get cardiovascular disease and die, right? That is what we've been told, and we believed it. Well, in 1900, there was basically 0 heart attacks. If you go back a couple of hundred years ago, cardiovascular diseases and autoimmune diseases, they barely didn't exist. Like cancer didn't really exist a few hundred years ago, right? How ridiculous is that? And now it has absolutely skyrocketed. Well, why is that? Well, about 100 years ago, there was this certain oil that was used on machines as lubricant. In the war, there was oil that was used as machine oil lubricant. And then one really smart individual thought, hey, we could eat that. And so Crisco was invented. In 1911, Crisco was invented, and it was the first vegetable oil type of thing used instead of butter or margarine, for example. And then it came along this guy in about 1950 called Ancel Keys, and he single-handedly costed the lives of millions. Millions. And a lot of people now compare him to Hitler because he single-handedly has destroyed our health. That is because of a study in 1958 called the 7 Countries Study, which basically says that the more fat you eat, like the more saturated fat that you eat, the more likely you are to die from cardiovascular disease. For example, you can see here, the more dietary calories we get from fat, then the more deaths there are. But there was just one little thing that he decided to leave out. And people discovered it quite a few years later, where he cherry-picked the data. So lots of countries were involved in this study, but they didn't fit his hypothesis in what he believed. And so he just cherry-picked the ones that did fit his hypothesis. So the study was completely flawed. Nonetheless, there were companies like the American Heart Association who saw this and thought, oh, money, right? Because seed oils are way cheaper to produce than animal fats, because of course you've got to like graze the cattle and you've got to raise them and then you've got to kill them and then all that. Whereas oil is just very automated. So they saw this as a ton of money, like an opportunity to make a ton of money. And so they capitalized on it. And they were bribed over $20 million by like cereal sugar companies to push this lie. And just to prove it, this is a clip that I saw recently from someone called Paul Saladino, who talks about like the animal-based diet and how seed oils are bad. He uploaded this video where it shows how the American Heart Association literally doesn't care about health. So I'm just gonna let you watch this for a second and see what you think of it, because it is just absolutely absurd. Now, just before we watch it, I didn't understand it until Paul explained it. So just give it a second for him to explain what they're actually talking about.
Relations for the American Heart Association. I'm here to testify today in opposition to Senate Bill 379. The Heart Association is concerned about potential impacts of this bill on participation and population health. Imposing nutritional restrictions will interfere with the primary function of SNAP, reducing hunger, without reducing root causes of chronic disease.
I often say that I can never be surprised in this building, but for the American Heart Association to be against this bill.
This, my friends, is what corruption looks like. They are against removing soda, cookie, candies, and chips from food stamps because that would not address the root cause of disease. That's crazy. Large organizations like the American Heart Association have been lobbying our lawmakers to keep ultra-processed junk foods, which clearly contribute to obesity, diabetes, chronic illness, heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these things on the SNAP food stamps program. Send this to people who are going to write to their lawmakers. These foods should be removed from the food stamps program immediately, and you should be very skeptical of organizations like the American Heart Association. They do not have your best interest in mind for your health. This is corruption.
So, we've been lied to by these companies that saturated fat increases cholesterol, and cholesterol is a bad thing, right? Everyone agrees that cholesterol is bad. And saturated fat increases this, particularly LDL. So a quick little lesson, we have HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. But just for now, we're going to focus on HDL and LDL. HDL is seen as good cholesterol, and then LDL is seen as bad cholesterol. And as I said, saturated fat increases bad cholesterol. So saturated fat is bad, right? Because high levels of LDL, bad cholesterol, causes these clogged arteries, and that's what gives us these diseases and kills us, right? So saturated fat is bad because it increases that, right? Well, it is not actually the increase in LDL which is the problem, it is the oxidization of the LDL. Now you can see here that oxidized cholesterol is a form of LDL cholesterol that has undergone oxidization, and that's when the LDL comes into contact with the reactive oxygen species. You don't really need to know all this like sciencey stuff, it's a bit detailed, but essentially when cholesterol becomes oxidized, it can contribute to the plaque formation in the arteries, which leads to heart disease and things like stroke. So it is not the increase in cholesterol, it is the oxidization of the cholesterol. Now, seed oils are high in something called omega-6 fatty acids. So things like sunflower oil, corn oil, you can read them. They are all very high in omega-6 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 fatty acids are also known as linoleic acid. That is the word you need to remember, linoleic acid. And humans used to only consume about 2 to 3%, like 2 to 3% of their calories, their daily intake, was this linoleic acid. And that's because seeds, they barely ate seeds anyway, so they get it from other products, right? But seeds are not very oily anyway, so they couldn't just like get loads of oil from seeds, right? Like you can just imagine there's not much oil in a seed. So now what they've done to change that, to get all these oils, is to go through this unbelievably big, long process to get these oils out of these seeds. And this, you can read them here, like I don't even know what half of these are because they're just so ridiculous, right? How is this natural in any way? And also at one point, they are unbelievably rancid, like they smell so bad and they just wouldn't even be palatable. You wouldn't even be able to consume them because they were that bad. So they actually get bleached so that they are completely removed of the smell, the rancidity, if that's a word, so you can consume them. That is not, you are not supposed to be consuming these. And because they are not very oily at all, to make like a small amount of oil, you need a ton of these seeds. You need so many. And can I just remind you that we only consumed about 2 to 3% of our calories as linoleic acid because we couldn't get all of these seed oils. We couldn't get all the oils out of these seeds. We wouldn't be eating tons and tons of seeds a day. We just didn't do that. That wasn't part of our diet. Whereas now, in the modern day, it isn't 2 to 3% of our calories. It is more like 10 to 20%. A fifth of our calories, a fifth of our diet is allocated to these oils, to linoleic acid. And here is the issue. Linoleic acid is prone to oxidation. Can I just remind you that oxidized cholesterol leads to this plaque formation that causes heart disease and stroke. So eating these unsaturated fats, we've been told that saturated fats are good. Eating the unsaturated fats leads to a lot of linoleic acid in our system, which then becomes oxidized, leading to inflammation and cell damage, which equals cardiovascular disease. Unsaturated fats cause cardiovascular disease. And people are now eating more unsaturated fats because we've been told this lie that saturated fats are bad. More people are eating unsaturated fats, like, for example, the canola oil and the soybean oil and corn oil, and people are dying anyway. More people are dying. More people are listening to this advice, and we are being told that it's correct, and more people are dying. Why are we believing this lie if more people are dying when listening to this advice? Make it make sense. This is serious. It causes 20 million deaths per year, cardiovascular disease, because we are listening to this advice that these unbelievably processed, unnatural oils are good for us and heart healthy, and the natural oils that we've been consuming for millions of years are bad. Nature doesn't make bad fats, factories do. That is the cause of this. Now, the good fats that we can consume are butter, tallow, ghee. You probably haven't even heard of tallow or ghee, right? Like, that is insane. So it's just basically animal fats. And then also you've got coconut oil, avocado oil, and olive oil. These are fruit oils. They are not vegetable oils. They are not seed oils. They are fruit oils. So they can literally just be pressed like that. Like you've probably seen like cold pressed olive oil or something, right? They have been pressed, so it doesn't go through that massive process. So even though when they get heated up, I preferably do not heat these up because it has almost the same effect as seed oils, like the linoleic acid and everything. So preferably just use butter, tallow or ghee and don't use these, but these are a lot better than seed oils. For example, canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, grapeseed oil, margarine, and peanut oil. Please do never consume these again. Never. Because they are detrimental to your health. And to do that, just check your labels. Whenever you're looking at something, you'll be amazed at how many ingredients are in these random products. Like cheese and onion flavor crisp. Look how many things are in here, right? It should just be potato and like 2 flavors, and that's it, right? And look at this. And look, you've got sunflower oil, rapeseed oil. You've got like all of these oils. I remember a few months ago, I got a bag of nuts, and it was just nuts, right? Just nuts on its own, nothing else. I looked at the ingredients, and there was like 3 different oils in there, and I was like, why? Why? All we need, I just asked for a bag of cashew nuts, right? I don't want all these oils and these excess things, so check your labels. And now this is what I eat to make sure that I don't get all of these acids into my system, this linoleic acid. So I eat meat, fruit, eggs, and raw dairy, and that is it. You do not need anything else. This will change your life. I feel absolutely phenomenal. I have never felt better in my life. And in fact, the other day, I was at an airport and I hadn't eaten anything like all day. So I wanted to get like one of those burger patties from Burger King because they are 100% beef, like they're no added ingredients or anything. But the only thing is they will be cooked in sunflower oil. That is the only thing, or like some random oil, right? I can't remember which one it is. And I ate it and it tasted fine or whatever. The day after, I had cramps in like the back of my hamstring. I had like a headache, as in if someone was like pressing my head inwards like that, right? I just felt a little bit ill and on edge and a little bit, and that's because it had just been cooked in these oils. I noticed this difference. Now, you won't notice the difference right now because you are constantly consuming these oils. But as soon as you get them out of your life, out of your system, and then go back to trying a little bit of it, you will realize how bad they are because they are poison. You are not supposed to consume these oils. They are not healthy. So please, for the love of God, do not fall for this lie like everyone else has. Because the chance of you getting these cardiovascular diseases, autoimmune diseases, will be absolutely exponential the more of these seed oils you eat. Seed oils are not good. End of debate. Good night.